Hello and welcome to National Park Wild. I'm Eric, and today I'm looking at this list of possible contenders for America's 64th National Park. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel so you know when new national park content comes out. So for this video, I was given this link by Spinlok, by the way. Thank you for the idea of talking about the next possible national park. I'm going to go through this list of potential national park sites, and they could become America's 64th National Park. I'll talk about whether I think they're worthy of park status, and how feasible I think each one is. Then at the end I might talk about a few others that don't make the cut. I've not looked at the list yet, but let's take a look at the introduction here. So we're all wondering which park will take the title next, and the top contenders include scenic national forests, ancient cultural sites, lazy rivers, and moon-like volcanic landscapes. Already sounds like Craters of the Moon might be on here. So the National Park Service receives countless submissions for possible new ones that make sense, and basic criteria. So it must have scenic or historic significance. Sure, I definitely would think that's most important. The preservation of land must protect the environment or culture of an area. Absolutely. And the site must be open for all of the public to enjoy and experience. That's one thing where I think national forests might be in a weird situation because some of them allow certain activities that national parks would not. So first up is Delaware Water Gap. This one I have not been to, but from everything I've heard in terms of recreation and scenery, this seems like it could be one of the best national parks in the East if it was given that status. I don't know what crowds are like there, and if national park status would give it more publicity, meaning more crowds. I don't know if that could ruin the experience, but I do think Delaware Water Gap would be a great contender for the next one, even though I haven't been there. It is based on what I know, but looking at hiking, waterfalls, beaches, that definitely seems like a very good idea. Next up, Ocmulgee Mounds National Historic Park. That's in Georgia, I believe, yes. And I have not been to this one either. It's a more historic one from my understanding. Sort of a Native American type thing. Let's see what this says about it. So ceremonial mounds display skilled soil knowledge, engineering techniques. So this would be very similar to Mesa Verde in a way, but in the East. So I think based on what America seems to be looking for in a 64th National Park, I don't think this one will happen. It's a possibility, but I think Delaware Water Gap is much more likely. The next one is Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. That's in Minnesota. And this one is similar to Voyageurs National Park. So depending on popularity of that one, which does seem to grow a little bit, but not a ton, that one's a possibility. But parks like that, I do feel they could happen. They have a lot of great water activities like canoeing, and I imagine in the winter there's a lot of great activities. But Voyageurs is not a national park that a ton of people recognize or go to. So based on what I know about what the new national park most likely will be, I think they're going to go for a more well-known area, though I do think this would be a good contender. But so far, Delaware Water Gap is definitely the top one. Number 4, Craters of the Moon. Now this is one I can definitely get behind. I think it easily deserves park status. It is a beautiful place. Otherworldly landscape, there's hiking, caving, there's a lot to see and do here. There's plenty of unique flora and fauna as well, and I feel this would be the best contender of the ones so far. Maybe not as much for the tourism aspect compared to something like Delaware Water Gap, but I would love to see Idaho get its first national park. Idaho's a beautiful state. And I know Yellowstone's technically in Idaho, but it's really not an Idaho park. But I think Craters of the Moon is a great pick, and I would say that would be probably my number one choice to be the next national park. Mount Hood National Forest. Now this one, I think a beautiful area. Is in Oregon, and it's one of the tallest mountains in the area, tallest in the state, I know. I feel Mount Hood would be good for recreation, but the biggest issue is that it does already have a lot of visitors, and making it even more major could kind of take away from some of the recreation. One thing that I feel is kind of an issue with national forests being national parks is the fact that they allow a lot of different activities that many national parks would not have. Some of them have hunting. Now, I believe Mount Hood does have hunting in this national forest, and that's where a lot of the people who enjoy recreation there might move away from it. And this seems much more of an activity-based one than a scenery-based one, but I think it could still be a great place. Mount Hood does not seem like it would be the next national park, but I can see why many, especially locals in the area, would think it would be a good pick for one. Next up is, I'm going to try to pronounce this one, Atchafalaya National Heritage Area. That's in Louisiana, I believe, based on the name. I imagine this one is similar biodiversity and similar to Everglades National Park. Definitely very different, but has the same kind of primary focus in terms of what would be preserved. If it is preserved right now very well, I think that would be good, and it could stay the way it is right now. However, I do also feel that maybe it would be beneficial for this one to gain a better status. I don't know about national park for this one, but with culture and biodiversity, it could be a good pick. But for now, I still do think Craters of the Moon and Delaware Water Gap are the best contenders. Allegheny National Forest. These mountains are beautiful. These I am familiar with. And I think this definitely deserves national park status. As far as the east goes, it's one of the most scenic areas. You have hikes. It's beautiful. It's primarily a scenery-based one for sure, and I think this rivals things such as Acadia, and I feel Allegheny would be a very good one. Once again, though, it is a national forest, so changing it could make it a little more difficult, but to be Pennsylvania's first national park would be interesting. And given that national parks definitely do seem to be first in their state most recently, with White Sands being the one exception, I think this is definitely a very likely contender, though I still do kind of lean toward Craters of the Moon in terms of scenery. Next up is Maine National Monument. That's home to Spirit Mountain. This is a very sacred area, and is somewhat reminiscent of what makes Uluru a very special place to protect. And Uluru Katahdin is a stunning national park in Australia, so I do think this could be a very strong pick. The big thing that somewhat holds us back is I imagine it's much more of a cultural area than one that people would want a lot of tourists going to. So I think locals may actually possibly object to the idea of this being a national park. So I'm not sure if it would be the best pick. It still has the great scenery, but the cultural significance, I can see where maybe this one would not become the highest honor of recreation in the area, because adding recreation to a place like this could be an issue. Next up, we have Tongass National Forest. Now this is my absolute number one pick in terms of scenery. The forest is beautiful. Not to mention you have Mendenhall Glacier, which is possibly the most beautiful site in all of America. Near Juneau, Alaska, it would be very similar to something like Lake Clark or Katmai, where it has breathtaking scenery and wildlife, but very few people would go every year. So it's not one that I think will become a national park, because after 1980 they just stopped doing national parks in Alaska basically. There are so many areas that could be preserved, and if this was being preserved the way it is, I think it's okay. I would love for this to gain national park status, as it really deserves it, at least in terms of scenery. But I can see where, because of recreation such, and the fact that it's very inaccessible, this one's probably not happening. I want it to, but unlikely. Now we have Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. That's in Maine, the sort of the North Woods area, and North Woods is a huge area. This one's smaller, but I do think Maine has a lot more to offer than Acadia, and this could be a very different type of scenery, but as I mentioned, it seems the National Park Service does want to have first of its state national parks. So because Maine does already have Acadia, this seems unlikely, similar to how Tongass National Forest would not be the first in Alaska to become a national park. So this one I'm not sure about. And the final one, it looks like, I'm guessing, I would have thought there was only 10, but number 11, Driftless Rivers. This one is very interesting, because this one's actually running a bit of a campaign to become a national park, and I don't know how I feel about that. There's undoubtedly natural scenery here, but similar to something like Indiana Dunes, you have a lot of townships surrounding it, and I don't know how this one would go with a national park. There's a little bit of not in my backyard syndrome going on with this one, I believe. Some people in the area really don't want a national park, bringing in a ton of people. I'm just not sure. I do think this would be a unique enough area because there's no national park in Wisconsin, and it's on the border of that in Minnesota. This one does have the natural scenery to earn national park status, and I'm sure it has the recreation given that it is along rivers and all. But I feel, for a lot of reasons, this one is highly unlikely. So that is this entire list. Other ones I think would be very good contenders, I wonder if I'm able to scroll in on this map and show. I would definitely say Devil's Tower is a very good pick. I'm sorry that I'm struggling to pull up specifically, but Devil's Tower in Wyoming would be an excellent one because not only does it have stunning natural scenery, but it has good recreation, and of course it's up there, and I don't know why I went to the bottom of Wyoming, but Devil's Tower is one of my favorite national monuments. The site is awe-inspiring, there's wildlife, there's recreation, and it's in the South Dakota Black Hills area, but also in Wyoming. The one thing with Wyoming is it does already have some national parks, so maybe it wouldn't be getting the next one, but I would love for Devil's Tower to become a park. Another really great contender, I think, would be Glen Canyon, the National Recreation Area, which is definitely a beautiful place. There are issues with Lake Powell right now, but from everything, from the scenery to the recreation, it's possibly the best place in the US to go for natural scenery that is not already a national park. And I really would love it to become one. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but I would love to see that. So what will America's 64th National Park be? Of all of the ideas I've given, I think the most likely is Craters of the Moon National Park in Idaho. Because of the fact that it would be the first in the state, it's a beautiful area, many love it, and it has a great, overwhelming amount of support of people who want it to become a national park. I think it could definitely be the next one. The next most likely, at least of these options I'd say, is Delaware Water Gap, but I think Craters of the Moon is probably going to be the 64th National Park. So those are just some of my ideas. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below places you think should become national parks, and whether you think any of the ones on this list would be really good fits. Subscribe for more national park content. I'll see you next time.